Hello and welcome back. And we're now on chapter 6, which is strategic position. This is for management 449. And in chapter 6, you're going to be focusing on learning objectives 6.1, 6.3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, chapter 6 is really cool because we came off of all this diagnosis in chapters 2, 3, and 4. In chapter 5, you got a sense of those 5 generic strategies. But now we're going to think about getting and keeping your strategic position. So your strategic position for your company is a lot like gardening. Sometimes you want it to expand, and sometimes you need to defend your position. So the entire chapter is fantastic, and a majority of the learning objectives will be included. But the trick here for chapter 6 is to not memorize. That's bad, bad, bad. There's too much to memorize. What you want to try to do is understand the logic and really get to think about that strategic positioning, how that's based on your competitive advantage, and how you can get into position or defend your position. So you're either going to expand the scope of operations or you're going to contract your scope of operations. In your market share, you also want to think about eroding your rivals' market shares. What's your company's competitive advantage? What's your best resource? What's your best capability? It's a different version of you do you. So are you going to offer a better product at a lower price? Are you going to go after next generation products? Which rivals will you attack? That's what you'll be reading for. Are there any rivals who are in a vulnerable position? Is there market share? Is there a firm that's about to go under? Are there small regional firms that might not have the capital to compete effectively? And there's a great thing in the book called Blue Ocean Strategy. Have you ever gone to the ocean, go to the beach? We live in Southern California, and you look over off the pier and you go, wow, that ocean just goes forever. Okay, that's what a blue ocean strategy is. You're creating a new market segment. It's a special kind of offensive move that we take when we're going for establishing a specific competitive position. Then there's also the situation when you want to get defensive, when you're already in a good competitive position and you just want to cut people off. Okay, so you want to fortify your position. You want to defend your competitive advantage, which is that difference that you bring to the table. And there's 2 ways to do that. You either block your challengers or you scare them. And you let them know that if they retaliate, that you're going to go after them. And you do that either by, there's a lot of ways to do it. You can either do it by issuing some kind of public statement, by having a huge cash artillery so that they know that if they come after you, you're going to get them back. You're looking for that in chapter 6. Now, I want to talk about scope of operations. I mentioned it briefly earlier. You can expand or you can contract it, but there's also a couple different ways to do that. You can expand horizontally, going this way, which means it's the range of products or services that you are into. So Disney has a very wide range of it's a very horizontally diversified company. They're in theme parks, they're in media, they're in print media, they're in sports. Disney's very horizontal. Whereas Panera, for example, there's a Panera right on the corner of Cal State Fullerton. They're very, very specific. Organic, bakery. That's it. That's all they want to do. They don't want to do anything else. They just want organic bakery. So that's horizontal scope. Now you can either expand that or contract it in order to fortify your strategic position. And then there's also vertical scope. Now when I talk about vertical scope, I'm looking up the value chain towards my raw materials, and then we call it down the value chain towards my consumers. So I want to decide whether I'm going to go up the value chain or down the value chain, whether I'm going to expand or whether I'm going to contract. Amazon is very vertical, okay? We go as consumers to Amazon. We're the consumer and they're a retailer. They have the distributor and they're also the wholesaler. Okay, they might not be the manufacturer, but that's pretty darn vertical. Whereas a company like Target, for example, is a strict retailer. They don't try to do anything else. They're just the retail lover. They don't go after vertical scope. Now, what that's going to help you to decide is whether to acquire or merge with companies. So a merger is if two or more companies combine under one name. Okay, an acquisition is a company goes in and purchases another company and then absorbs that company's operations. And so some of the different things to consider are, can you cut costs by merging or acquiring? Can you cover different geographic areas? Is there quick access to technology? And is there a convergence of new opportunities? A special kind of offensive is a strategic alliance where you make an agreement with another company, and you'll read about that in chapter 6. And a joint venture. So a joint venture is when there's a newly formed entity in a jointly owned corporate entity. So strategic alliance, companies stay separate. In joint venture, the companies come together and create a baby, a joint venture, a third baby. And then outsourcing, and again, these are just different ways of getting a strategic position. Outsourcing is essentially paying another company to do something that's pivotal to your operations. So that's the emphasis in chapter 6. You want to think about how to grow your company. I'm trying to spray pesticide. It's not pesticides, it's neem oil on my plants here to protect and defend my capital. And I hope that they grow. And in that way, corporate strategy is a little bit like gardening, one of my favorite activities.